much has Scott told you about the podcast?
A little bit. Like, I mean, I'm sure that we've probably influenced him a little bit. I mean, we've been friends now for a while now, and he's seen the success that we've had. I know that he's probably going in a similar way where he's trying to talk to other fitness leaders in the space and get information. But I have no idea like what he's going to ask me today. Like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I imagine if he has me on there, hopefully we'll talk more business stuff, which is what I like to talk about.
Yeah.
Sal's more of the science nerd, likes to talk more fitness and nutrition, but I'll go wherever.
Yeah, this is something we kind of toyed with for a while now, and especially with the pandemic and all that, just kind of, the silver lining of it, using it as a catalyst to innovate and try different things, and how can you evolve your business to make it more insulated against some of these external factors that you can't really control. Building a relationship with Scott, he is very, I feel like he's got what it takes as far as just being a conversationalist and somebody who's inquisitive and intelligent.
Oh, it's what attracted us to him in the first place. That we all hit it off when we first met. We didn't find out later that we were as connected as we were. So we all grew up in the same, school of hard knocks of 24-hour fitness. So we knew a lot of the same people. Sal, myself, Justin, and him all worked there years and years ago. And his business philosophy is very, very similar to ours. He's a kind of old school guy, kind of gets it, but he's trying to navigate in this new school world.
Right.
As we were too. I was one of those guys, as you guys will probably learn today when we talk. I didn't have Facebook, I didn't have Instagram, Twitter, I didn't have any of that shit. Back then I used to make fun of people that did it. I used to be like, I have friends in real life, I don't need digital friends.
Right.
That was the way I looked at it. And then it was over time, I would start to hear these rumors of these kids that are making millions of dollars online off of Facebook or YouTube, and at that point it was still a rumor. And then I finally met somebody. I met somebody when I was 28, playing basketball with this kid, and at that time I had success in the marijuana business, and I'm playing ball with this kid who's probably 24, and I'm in the gym at weird hours, 11, 3. And this kid's playing with me all the time. We ended up playing on a rec ball league. That's when I finally talked to him. I said, hey man, what do you do for work? He said, I started a Facebook business. I'm like, what? Sat him down and he kind of laid out the blueprints, and he didn't even have that massive of a following. I think he had built up to 20, 30,000 followers. And he wasn't rich, but he was making six figures, making $100,000 a year with all kinds of freedom. And that was the first time that I actually knew somebody who built a social media presence, pivoted into an e-commerce business, and made good money doing it. And that was at that night, I went home, turned on YouTube, turned on Instagram, and said, okay, I'm gonna figure this thing out. That was kind of the beginning of what ended up being all this stuff.
When did you guys start Mind Pump?
Mind Pump officially, the LLC started 6 years ago. I was building towards it though 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, and so in crazy part is, so was Sal and Doug. So before we ever even met, Doug had convinced Sal that you need to get, Sal had his own gym and Doug was a client, and he convinced Sal that you have the personality to go online. You need to get into the digital world, and I can help you with that. Let's build a digital program. So they began building the first MAPS anabolic program, and they built that together before I even met them. What I was doing was Justin and I were building an app. We had this idea of gamifying fitness, and I dumped about $70,000 into an app that we were trying to build. I was the money, Justin was the tech guy. I was doing other things. My job was to get the audience. So this is where I'm like, hey, I'm gonna do this Facebook, Instagram, YouTube thing. I'll start to gather the people, I'll pay the money, you build this app out for us. And then when it's ready, I'll hopefully have an audience to introduce it to, and then let's see what we can do with it. During that time, Sal and I were communicating on Facebook. We knew of each other, but we had never actually hooked up or met or anything. And actually what connected us was marijuana, because I had just started up 2 of the first medical marijuana clubs in San Jose. And I was learning all about that because I knew nothing about it before. I was an anti-pot guy before that, and then got into it for business reasons. He was researching cannabis because his mother-in-law was dying of cancer. And so we started chatting online about marijuana. And I was like, dude, this, and he obviously knew his stuff, and I was like, really smart fitness guy. And at that time it was very taboo in fitness. Like, so for me to meet another fitness dude who knew a lot about fitness and then knew a lot about cannabis, like I thought I was the only person like that was kind of dabbling in both areas. And so we just totally connected. And he sent me over one day, he's like, hey, I want you to take a look at what my buddy Doug and I are doing and tell me what you think. He sent me over Maps Anabolic when it was all completed. I go, oh my God, this is actually perfect. We need to talk because I'm building something over here with my buddy, Justin. We all gotta meet. And so we all met at my house for the first time, no one ever being in the room, and it was like automatic chemistry. In the room and there's actually a recording of those 2 hours somewhere on one of our iPads somewhere. Katrina had the smarts to like, she was listening in the kitchen, I didn't know. And it was like bah, 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 back and forth, and she hit record and recorded the whole thing. And when they all left, she was like, oh my God, that was really interesting to listen to. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, man, that was really, really interesting to hear you guys talk like that. And Doug was the one who had piped in at one point and goes, we should put this on a podcast. And I was like, and I know nothing about podcasting at this point. I know about the industry as far as like where it's going. Like I was following like the growth of it. But I thought it was like as complex as starting a radio station, or like we don't have sponsors, we don't have the equipment, like don't you have a network you have to have? I was like, nah, like I've got all the gear at my house. We can bring it over here next Saturday and let's just try it. And everyone's like, okay. That was the birth of MindPalm, man.
It's insane.
Right?
It used to cost millions of dollars to have that infrastructure to do that same thing.
That's why we feel so blessed. We feel very blessed that we live in the time that we do, that we don't have to jump through a bunch of bullshit hoops and say what we want to say, what our producer or our network says. Like we were allowed to be off, and we were off the rails at the very beginning. And a lot of that was nerves, you know, like we used to drink or smoke weed before we started because we were so nervous. Like none of us were media guys. Like I hated this shit. Like I hated cameras on me and doing all that stuff. So all the guys did. And so, you know, a lot of it was nerves. So we cussed a lot. We did some really crazy topics because it was kind of like shock and awe. Like, can we like just say whatever and see if people think it's entertaining? And we knew what we had that was the secret sauce though, was we all had 20 years of experience in the space. And over those 20 years, each of us had accumulated so much knowledge of training normal people. And when we looked at the landscape of like all the fitness influencers that were out there, a lot of them were young kids that were, the message that they were presenting was similar to the message I was presenting when I was 25. And then I learned a lot more later on in life. And so we saw a huge opportunity. We're like, dude, there's this kid with 2 million followers, this kid over here with 10 million, 3 million. Like they all have these massive businesses and the message they're giving is not the right one. Like, let us get out here. If we could just get everyone's attention and get their eyes on us and our ears listening to us, we'll be able to present more valuable information anyway. And that we knew. That was the goal. The goal was, we had no massive plan of what it was gonna look like, but it was like, can we just gain all of this attention by providing so much damn value that we just saturate everybody else. We just saturate all the competitors with better information for free, and then we'll worry about monetizing. Because we had the program to sell, and we didn't. We didn't sell for over a year, even when we were building, and like all the energy around it. Like there was a lot of times we're like, hey, should we start this thing? Should we start selling? Like people are like, really, you could tell like the energy around the business. Like, no, wait. You know, let's wait until we feel like we have to, right? And it was like a year and a half later, and it was at a point where people were trying to give us money. People were DMing, emailing, they were like, oh my God, you changed my life, you helped my mother, like, can I give you guys money? Do you have a Patreon? And that's when we were like, okay, we're at a place right now where people are just trying to give us money for nothing. If we now provide something of value, like a digital program that we've written, then we should have no problem selling. And that was, turned it on, and you know, it was slow at first. Like, I remember it was a big deal when, you know, we sold a program every day. It was like, oh my God, we got a sale every day. And it was $120 divided by 4 guys, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we're not getting rich, you know? But it proved that, okay, we have a business here. We're on the right track. And then it was just, you know, continue to reiterate and go back at it, reiterate, go back at it, reiterate, and get better and better at our craft. And I mean, still to this day, I think that we notice about every 200 episodes is what we say, we find ourselves kind of level up like a little bit better than what we were 200 ago. But we think it takes that many. Like So when I see people that want to do the same thing and they're like, you know, oh, let's try this out. You know, I've been doing it for 6 months and they're doing 1 episode a week. It's like, yeah, bro. It took me 200 before I thought I was just a little bit better than what I was 200 ago. Like, so it's taken that to get to the place where now. And now we do things too, where we have now a stand-up guy who comes in on Mondays and trains us, like, so we can work on our, you know, verbal fluency and cadence and how to play off of each other. So we're trying to really sharpen those skills. We've got to a place where most of the money and stuff that we made, we pump back into the business by hiring teams of people. If I was 25, it'd been really easy to be greedy and put all that money in my bank account and be driving around a Lamborghini. But instead, all of us are like, no, we're building something greater than that. Like, our goal was always to scale ourselves out of the business. So we would build something within it. It's monetizing. We've got systems in place. Okay, hire somebody. So take less money, let them handle that, move on to the next thing. And now we're at a place where all we have to really focus on is doing the podcast. I mean, you see them out by, everybody was hanging out early or late today. Normally everyone's gone by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We work 9 a.m. to 2, Monday through Thursday, sometimes Friday, and that's it. It's all pretty much on an automated machine. This space we got, so we started in Doug's living room on a fold-out plastic, you know, table with mats and stuff. We were there for 6 months, and then at the 6-month mark, when we saw we were getting a little bit of traction, we're like, hey, we should upgrade to a little tiny studio. We got over in Willow Glen. It was $500 a month, and it was literally, you know, this big. It was like 350, 400 square feet. It was tiny. We were stacked on top of each other, but at least we could foam the walls and get good sound, which is what Doug really wanted. And at that time, we were all still working our other jobs. Like, we all had full-time careers and businesses going. So it was still all about just like, we'd come in on 8 o'clock at night, we'd rip 2 or 3 episodes and just like go back to work every day and kind of do that. We did that for about 1 year. We were at that, 1.5 years, we were at that studio. And then here, so we've been here now almost 4 years here. All our money that we had stacked up, we took all of that to build this out. So we paid all this cash and had it all done, and built this spec. I think we dumped about 150 grand into, that's probably the most expensive room, obviously, with all the.
Can we get a quick tour?
Oh, you guys haven't gone in there?
Yeah.
Oh, this whole time we're flattening my gums. You guys haven't seen this nicest part of the place, right? The My Pump TV channel, that has 500,000 subscribers, and that's all like exercise demos. So we did that a long time ago. It's really good for the back end of the business. We can get into that later. Doesn't make a lot of money. That's another thing I always tell kids that think they're gonna be a YouTube star and shit. Like, that thing has 500,000 subscribers. We've done, I don't know how many thousands of videos, and the thing, what do we make, Doug? 6-7 grand a month off of that thing?
Yeah, a little over 6.
Yeah, I mean, pay the fucking kids to run it and stuff. We're happy it's breaking even. It was losing for like 3 years. So there wasn't even a lot of money in the YouTube channel for a long time. Now the podcast channel, we started like, I don't know, 2 years ago, Doug, when we started really putting these all up on video. Mm-hmm. And that has really started to take off. And I honestly feel like it really started to take off because, again, talking to you guys about the 200 episodes, we started to level up. We just started to get more entertaining and more fun to watch, and it appealed to the audience on YouTube. And so it's like rapidly growing right now. It's adding about 300 to 700 subscribers every day on that channel. It's only got, I think it's approaching 70,000 subscribers, and just really started taking off the last 60 days. But it's already out producing revenue than the massive channel. So now we're starting to reinvest in the studio. Justin's got somebody, in fact, Scott introduced us to somebody, and we're gonna change the aesthetics of this. New chairs and floor and posters and shit are gonna go up, and Justin's guitar, and we're gonna try and bring the aesthetics up with this a lot more. We built this, it was all about sound. Like, when we got into this space, like what we noticed, or Doug noticed in particular, was that most people's sound quality was crap. And nobody put like a lot of effort in a sound. And like, literally, to me, like when you're listening to a podcast, that's like equivalent to somebody watching high definition TV or watching an old school like UHV channel or something. You know, it's like, you gotta have that crisp, beautiful sound. And so all the money and effort that Doug put into this place was about that. We didn't give a shit about what it looked like. It was like, does this place have the most optimal sound for producing a podcast? Well, now that this space has continued to grow and get more popular, and now more and more people coming in, like, everybody's leveling up the way it looks, and we're finally getting on board, you know?
Where do you think we're at as far as, maybe a baseball analogy, like what inning are we at as far as the podcast industry?
Ooh, what inning? Oh, I think we're in the first or second inning of podcasting. I mean, I definitely subscribe to what Gary Vee's been touting for quite some time about audio. It just allows you to multitask. I'm sure if you guys, I don't know if you guys are listeners or not. I mean, I'm a big podcast, YouTube, audio listening, so I drive now every day here, and that's how I consume so much content. Like you can multitask. I can receive this information, or I can, like a lot of people, we have a huge following of truck drivers and people that could be doing their job, and they consume 8 hours of Mind Pump a day. So I just think I think that's growing, you know? I think YouTube and video will remain. I don't think it's gonna take that over, but just like your analogy with sports, like it's gonna be the MLB, and then there's the NBA, and then the NFL, like it's that big, and I think we're in the first couple innings, man. I think that it's still really, really small. And a good example of how small it still really is part of like, and this is a mistake we made, was waiting so long to put effort in YouTube. YouTube is such a bigger pool. So that's half of why we're having so much success on YouTube, is it's just a much bigger pool of people that are now finding us, and it's like rapidly growing, where we were kind of like a big fish in a small pond in the podcast world. Like we pretty relatively quickly made our way to the top fitness podcast in the world, but that's still a small to medium-sized pond when you compare it to like YouTube. So I think it's going to rival that as far as size, like the sport analogy you give. I think right now YouTube is like NFL, NBA, and the podcasting space is not even playing professional sport yet. Like another sign of that is what we're seeing in advertising. Like, so one of my favorite things to talk about is the advertising side of this business, because it's so green. Like when I came into it, I was blown away by how little people knew. Like it was like this arbitrary number of like $20 a CPM. It's like, who the fuck made that up? And why does this guy get it and I get the same thing when my sales scales is 10 times better than him just because we have the same amount? That makes no sense to me. And it's because no one's evolved it and done it. And so we're trying to evolve even what that looks like. And the players that are getting involved in advertising and podcasting is still, you don't see a lot of, I mean, you're starting to see the Coke and Pepsi, like we just got offered from Fiji Water. It's more of the smaller kind of new companies that are hip to it, that see the writing on the wall, because the conversion rates smokes radio and TV. So any real smart business person knows it, but they're so stuck in their old ways. Coca-Cola and brands like that have been around for decades, that they already have their $1 billion budget every year, that they already do all these other things, that getting them to go look at this little tiny podcasting space, they kind of like, whatever. But as it grows and gets more and more, and it's gaining more and more attention of bigger brands. Yeah, dude, we're in the first couple innings.
And speaking of monetization, I'm sure it's different from podcast to podcast, but roughly kind of the percentage between revenue from your own products and services versus, say, affiliates, sponsorship. Is it mostly just like you guys selling your own products, or is it kind of like a 50-50?
No, so we built this company to be three different LLCs. So we have Mind Pump Media, we have Maps Fitness Products, and then we have Mind Pump Investments. Mind Pump Media, underneath Mind Pump Media is sponsorships and like our apparel and things like that. So all sponsorship money in that. Maps Fitness Products is all the digital e-commerce. Now I told you originally that is what built this company. Like that was all the real revenue when we first started. They rival each other now. So we make almost as much money from advertising from other people for other people's brands every month as we do selling our own stuff. It took a while to catch up to that. And a lot of that was like, getting to a place where I could convince brands to spend the kind of money with us, because we charge 5 times what the average person our size charges. But we also provide, I think, 5 times the service of what someone does for partnership. The typical relationship with a podcast and a brand looks like this. Brand X finds podcast B and says, oh, you have X amount of followers, we pay $20 per CPM for that, would you like to talk about our beef jerky? And you go, okay, you sign a deal. And then they sign a deal for, say, 6 commercials. At the end of 6 commercials, Brand X evaluates, was that worth it? Did we get our ROI? If we did, we sign up for more. If we didn't, we peace out, we're out. Well, we just had a whole different approach than that. Like when I started talking to these brands, I said, my goal is for you to be successful. Well, one of the ways to make sure you guys are successful is that we have put somebody on our team that their job is to manage your brand. And so if you have someone on your team to communicate with my team weekly you can let us know how the numbers are going, and then we have so many different mediums that we can try and make up for that. So we only sell advertising on the podcast. We use all other medium channels, email, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all those other mediums to complement what I sell the partners. So that is what allows me to go after ridiculous numbers and say, and they're like, oh my God, we get, Joe Rogan charges us less than that. It's like, okay, well, does Joe Rogan read your commercial in the first 2 minutes, or does he build it into the content so it never gets missed? Does he go above and beyond if his numbers? No, those guys don't give a shit. They're already making a ton of money, and that's kind of how everybody's treated the advertising side in podcasting. We saw an opportunity to do it a lot better, and it's paid off. It just took a while to get to a place where I could build the trust with the brands. Like, let me show you that we'll deliver, and we do. Most everybody that works with us ends up working with us for years.
Just more of a commentary on the culture with cancel culture and just the way things are trending and censorship and deplatforming. And a lot of ways, podcast is kind of the almost like the final frontier, like
Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West. And in terms of monetization, it certainly helps to mitigate against that by having your own products and services. But as it applies to, say, third-party sponsors, I'm sure you guys have thought about it. Like, how do you address?
Absolutely, that's a very good question, and it's something that we actually talk about all the time. First, what protects us from worrying about that with partners, and so you saw that. Are you familiar with?
Yep.
And did you see what happened?
I actually listened to your podcast.
Okay, so it gets canceled. Why does it get canceled? Because 99% of revenue was dictated from the sponsorships. If someone did that to Sal, let's say Sal said something sexist or over the line, right? Whatever. Even if he didn't, let's just say the mob came after him. This is what they would get. Take a hike. We don't need any of that revenue. And all of our sponsorships can completely walk away, and we don't skip a beat in this business because we've built it around first the programs and us and what we do. The other thing is, and the next fear and to your question too is okay, well, what if it gets crazy with iTunes or something like that? This is why, and I think Gary Vee says this really well about looking at the landscape, is all of this is like investing in real estate, and you want to acquire real estate on all of these platforms so you're not held hostage to one, which I see this all the time with kids on Instagram. They build this massive Instagram, referring back to the kid who I picked on already. You have this huge 2 million following on Instagram with that, and YouTube, he lives and dies by that. They change the algorithm, and I've talked to him before where they'll change the algorithm and he loses 40 grand in a day. It's that's crazy because he's at the mercy of those platforms. So we're big on capturing these leads and taking them off all these platforms. So, email's not dead. Email still is the main source of income for us, right? So we have tons of, 60% of our traffic is organic, and that's from the thousands of blogs that we have out in the ether on Google. So we've got Google working for us, we've got the email list working for us, we have all those different platforms with us. So if one got shut down or we would block us one way, we would maneuver another direction. And if they ever try to really flex on us with cancel culture bullshit, we've all talked about, we'll burn this shit down. We don't care, what I'm saying? We're the worst people when it comes to some of that. You don't want to mess with any of us because we thought about all that and protected ourselves, that we have a greater vision for this, and we would never allow someone to kind of flex on us or get us to tell. That's why we've turned down networks. We've had networks come after us, but we're not going to change our messaging for however they want, which you see what's happening with. I think they're suffering because of it too.